Greetings, everyone. Paul from Paul's Passing Thoughts. I'm going to do another little short video here to help me catch up on issues brought up to me by readers. These little short videos are helpful in being able to address things quickly that come up. Had this article from the Gospel Coalition blog sent to me entitled "A Little Greek Can Be a Big Distraction." The thesis of the article from this Peter Kroll, whoever that is, I've never heard of him, is that Greek study helps are more hurtful to the average parishioner than helpful. And they go into this argument in this article using primarily one text of John 21 and kind of using that as a paramount example of how Greek study helps can actually confuse the average parishioner more than help them. And then he cites also D.A. Carson's argument for this. And what's curious is D.A. Carson spoke at a church that I was a member of years ago, back in the 90s, where he presented this same exact argument that the average pew sitter should simply stick with the plain sense of the English, especially since we have this wonderful new ESV version that is a New Calvinist version. Now, why would New Calvinists and Calvinists in general want parishioners to stay away from Greek study helps? Well, let's just look at one example, and I'm going to bring up, if you look at this icon down here, I'm going to bring up free software that can be downloaded on the internet called eSword. Alright, and here's what eSword does. It gives you this kind of lexicon-like view of the Bible. This happens to be the King James Version, which is a literal translation of the Bible. I'll explain a little bit on that later on. But what it'll do is, if you look here at this italicized words in the text that are in light gray, we have that here, and we have that here, okay? And what a literal translation is supposedly, in each case, use discretion through your own study, but the intent of a literal translation is to just, as much as possible, a word-for-word exchange the best English word for the actual Greek word from the manuscript. And as far as the difference between manuscripts and originals and versions and translations, we go into all of that in Confident Studies of the Scripture series, which can be found in our catalog at tankpublishing.com, and we don't have the updated catalog up there just yet. That'll happen today. But the Confident Study of the Scriptures two-part video series is catalog number V0018. You can also get it in the accompanied workbook form, and that is catalog number, let me find it here. First, let me just say that the Confident Study of the Scriptures MP3 is catalog number M0009, and you can get that through the catalog as well. And then the workbook is W0005. And in that series, I go into two-part series. I go into the difference between translations and versions and how they're useful to the Christian. We'll discuss that a little bit today, but I go into originals, I go into manuscripts, and all this, that, and the other. That is very good knowledge for the Berean to know. Now, back to the eSword software, which is free on the internet. Looking at the King James Version, which is a literal translation, and I just explained what that is. But these italicized words are English words that are added in to make the Greek word-by-word translation flow in regard to tenses and modifiers and that sort of thing, okay? The literal translation stays away from a presumed idea behind the text as much as possible, okay? And we'll discuss that a little bit later on. But where you see these green Strong's Concordance numbers besides each word, that is the literal Greek word that is in there. The italicized words in the gray here, again, help all of this flow in the English by inserting transitions, tenses, conjunctions, and that sort of thing. Okay? Not that there isn't prepositions and conjunctions and transitions in the Greek, but when those are actual Greek words, that becomes extremely relevant. Okay? And yes, when there has been some kind of transition or a tense added in by the English or by the translator into the English, yes, that must be taken note of because that can change the meaning of the whole passage. But let's look at Romans chapter 7, verse 24. O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of this death? Now, that verse of Scripture is often used by Calvinists to say, see, Christians are still wretched. Even as Christians, we are still sinners. And there's even a Calvinist radio program and blog called Wretched. Okay? Okay, so if you're a good Berean and you use the tools available to you in this information age to not take the word of men on this and study the Scriptures to show yourself approved, if you hover over the green Strong's number, we find that there's help in pronouncing that Greek word, all right, and the pronunciation is, looks like tel, e, poros. Poros, okay? So that helps us pronounce the word. And then we find that it's from the base of Strong's word G5007, a derivative of the base of G3984, and you can click on those links and learn even more about the base and the derivative of the word in the Greek. But it means, as you can see there, to endure a trial, enduring trial, miserable, wretched, enduring trial, Okay? And our good friend Andy Young can also tell us a lot about the word parts of the Greek word, prefixes, and so suffixes, so on and so forth, that teach us other things about the word. Andy's good at that stuff, but we can see plainly from what we see here is that the word doesn't mean a sinful wretch, an evil person. It means someone who's enduring a trial. Okay? Enduring a trial. So, this verse of Scripture is not saying that Paul isn't saying that he was evil. He said, "O afflicted man that I am." In what regard? He was enduring the trial of fighting against sin in the mortal body. So this also makes sense with the rest of the context. Who shall then deliver me from the body of this death? New Calvinists also treat that as daily salvation. Rather than redemption, which is different from salvation and speaks of the separate salvation of the body at resurrection, they make this justification. They make this salvation because, of course, we need a daily saving because we are still what? Evil. No, we aren't. Paul was just merely saying that he was afflicted, okay, and enduring a trial. So, let's look at another example of why it's important. Let's now look at Olive Tree software, which you can get online and is very inexpensive. And what's cool about this software is that it not only has the words that are the actual Greek word and in red, okay, and if you click on the red words, like the eSword, it gives you the Greek explanation. Olive Tree software does something a little bit more that is totally cool. Let's look at James 1, where we find, count it, 1, 2. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. See, the new Calvinists and Calvinists would say, perfection is the standard. And we all know that we can't be perfect, so this isn't about anything we do. This is about being perfected by the Spirit, okay? Also, count it joy, brothers, when you meet trials, trials of various kinds, all right? There you go. We should count it a joy when we suffer. All right? So in the midst of tragedy, we should rejoice. We should embrace the darkness. Okay? Well, that's not what this verse is talking about. Okay? This isn't what this verse is talking about at all. Let's look at the word trials. Okay, let's click on it. All right. Here we go. We find that the word is, and we don't, this doesn't do something eSword doesn't do. this doesn't do something that eSword does, and that have something in there to help you with the pronunciation. But there is the word, and basically, as you can see here, it means a putting to proof, a testing. Okay. It means to, the way Peter put it, to put something under pressure, and he used the example of testing gold, where it's melted down and all of the impurities come to the top. All right. So this means test. Okay. This means test. And note how the rest of the contents lends credence to that definition of the word. And see, this is what you can do when you use these Greek study helps and you get a definition of the word. You can look at the rest of the context and say, oh, well, that makes perfect sense in context. The context may also give more meaning to the definition of the Greek word. So you know the reason we rejoice is because when our faith is tested, you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Okay? And you can click on that word and see that it means patient enduring. It strengthens your patient enduring. Okay? So that's why we should rejoice. Okay? And let me see. It says, let steadfastness or perseverance have its full effect, that ye may be perfect, complete, lacking in nothing. So, this verse is not saying that we should rejoice in tragedy. It's saying that we should rejoice more or less in that as we get up in every day and meet the world, okay, that our faith is going to be tested, and all of these testings is throughout the whole day is an opportunity to strengthen our faith and become more spiritually mature. All right, it's a whole new outlook on life. The Christian isn't to be focused on what might happen and the woes of living in this terrible world. No, we're to focus on how today's life can make us stronger spiritually in the many faceted ways that our faith is tested. But Paul, it says to be perfect and complete. Okay, the Greek word there, often translated in the English word perfect. Well, let's look at this word. It is the word, looks to be teleos or something like that. It means applications of labor, growth, mental, and moral character. All right, completeness in regard to moral character, full of age, okay, wanting nothing necessarily or complete. Well, here's what Olive Tree software does that eSword doesn't do. Down here, you can click on this, and it'll do a search of the exact same Greek word in the rest of the New Testament to see how the word is used in other scriptures. So let's click on that. And we can see here in the ESV, I added the Strong's Concordance for the ESV to my olive tree software, which ends up being $20 or something like that. And we see that the word is used 17 other times in the New Testament, and let's click on that. And we see the other places where this word is used and how it's used in other scriptures. Okay, used as perfect in Matthew 6 a couple of times. Let me see here. Let me see here. In Romans 12, interestingly enough, it looks like, and let's click on it, yep, used perfect there again, okay. Same word, translated perfect, okay, and, let me see here, let's click back. So Romans 12:2, it's translated perfect. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, so that you may discern, okay, the will of the Lord and His perfect will. This is about to make even more sense to us why Paul translates the word perfect in there. Now we get into 1 Corinthians, where the word in 1 Corinthians 2:6 is translated what? Mature. Mature. Okay. Now, if you swap out the word perfect for mature in those other verses of Scripture, especially Romans 12:2, it makes perfect sense. And it's the same Greek word, all right? But it's the idea of maturity, that you may be mature, okay? Lacking in no wisdom to make you mature, all right? In 1 Corinthians 13:10, but when the perfect comes, or when the mature comes, talking about something future that will do away with the law, again, the idea of perfection or completeness or an ending is a very similar idea to the Greek word for maturity, or the idea of maturity. In 1 Corinthians 14:20, again, the word is translated maturity. Again, in Ephesians 14, talking about the knowledge of the Son of God that leads to mature manhood. Okay, Philippians. Again, 13:15, the word is translated mature, okay? So it's not perfection in the way that we think of perfection as sinlessness, okay? Or the absence of sin, but rather maturity. Again, in Colossians 1:28, the word is translated mature, okay? Again, in Hebrews 6:5-14, translated mature, okay? Now we're back to James 1:4, where we were, translated perfect, okay? In the book of James, it's translated perfect. In 1 John, it's translated perfect. What the word really means is mature. Spiritual maturity, okay? Now, lastly, let's look at the use of Bible Gateway. All right. Now, I already covered what literal translations are. There's also contemporary or modern translations that just basically seek to dumb down the scriptures so that the average parishioner who's not a studier can understand it without much effort. Bad idea. But now, paraphrase translations like the NIV and many others are very, very good ideas. Why? Because it goes beyond the literal translation, like the King James. The American Standard Version is more of a literal version. Of course, Young's literal translation is very literal, okay? But what is great about paraphrases is the translators endeavor to go beyond the literal translation and invoke the idea that they think the author is trying to present, more of ideas rather than a word-by-word transliteration. Why is that cool? Because what you have is a commentary or the opinions of a vast number of Greek, Hebrew, and English scholars. All right? People who have studied the languages for years and years and years and years. Now you can peruse what their opinions are, or their commentary is in regard to that, because that is reflected in how they translate the text. And you can look at all of the different opinions, also look at the translation, look yourself at the context and everything as a whole, look at the grammatical construction. And by the way, there's another awesome tool that you can use on the internet, where you can go to websites that will automatically diagram English sentences for you and break them down. Just Google sentence diagramming, and there's this awesome software where you can copy and paste the text, and it'll diagram it for you. That's very helpful as well. So, in Bible Gateway, which of course is also free, you've got your selected Romans 7 here, and then you can drop down and look at the rendering in all of these different versions. And it's awesome. Okay, enough for now. Have a great God-honoring day, and I hope this video was helpful.